can take your seats, please. And I have not gotten to do this in a good long time. A call to order the Common Council meeting of July 12th, 2022, and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Here we have Alder Carter. Get back. Alder Conklin. Present. Alder Conklin is present. Alder Curry. Here. Alder Curry is present. Alder Evers. Sorry, Evers. I apologize. He is excused. Alder Figueroa Cole. Here. Alder Figueroa Cole is present. Alder Foster. Here. Alder Foster is present. Alder Furman. Present. Alder Furman is present. Alder Haverson is excused. Alder Harrington McKenney.
Present.
Alder Harrington McKenney is present. Alder Heck. Here. Alder Heck is present. Alder Miadze. Alder Miadze is present. Alder Paulson. Here. Alder Paulson is present. Alder Fair. Here. Alder Fair is present. Alder Tischler. Here. Alder Tischler is present. Alder Verveer. Here. Alder Verveer is present. Alder Vittever is excused. Alder Wahilier. Here. Alder Wahilier is present, sorry. Alder Abbas. Here. Alder Abbas present. Alder Benford.
Present.
Benford is present. Alder Bennett. Here. Alder Bennett is present. Alder Carter. We'll get back to you. Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. So we will start with our meeting instructions, which the clerk will read for us.
Thank you very much. Welcome to our hybrid meeting. Those of you in the room, please do not join the meeting virtually. Those who are appearing virtually, if you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members attending virtually, if you're able, please activate your video for the purposes of quorum and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Alders, when you wish to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote, please push the person button on your microphone or raise your hand virtually. Those in the room will have their microphone turned on when they're recognized to speak. Those attending virtually can unmute themselves when recognized. When you are finished, all should mute themselves. Members of the public who have registered to speak, those appearing virtually, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. If you are here in person, when you are called to speak, approach one of the two podiums on either side of the dais and you will be recognized. For all registrants, the clerk will tell you when your time is up. After all public speakers, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the council, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Thank you. Madam Mayor, the chair is yours.
Thank you. So let me just take a moment on a few things as part of the opening remarks. And first of all, let me just say welcome. Welcome back to the chambers. It's good to see you all in person, and I'm really glad that we are able to facilitate this hybrid meeting. Thanks to the alders that are joining us virtually. But most of all, I want to say a really deep thanks to all of the staff that have made this possible. Our tech staff, our IT staff, the Common Council office staff, folks on my staff that have made, really put in hours and hours of work to figure out the systems and to align all of the technology to make it possible for us to do this in a hybrid way so that we can be returning to in-person meetings, but also accommodating the public participating virtually, members of our staff participating virtually, and then, of course, members of the body as well. So thank you very much to everybody who made that possible. I really appreciate your work. As usual, I will remind us that we are here to try and do the business of the city and encourage all of us to do that in the kindest way possible, to refrain from using profanity, whether we're members of the council, staff, or members of the public, and to assume good intent. Let's try and be kind to each other, particularly as we feel our way through this hybrid meeting format. And to that end, I will be trying to take the meeting relatively slow so that we can all get used to this new version of events. So if you have a question, certainly don't hesitate to raise your hand or get yourself in the queue. But I'll try and talk us through so that everybody can understand where we're at. We'll note that Alder Carter is present now. One other note for the folks who are in the room, if you are on the council or staff and need to use the restroom, you can use your swipe card to get in. If you do not have a swipe card, if you're a member of the public and need to use the restroom, my Chief of Staff, Mary Batari, can swipe you in. That is a workaround. We will fix that for our next meeting. We are figuring it out as we go, folks. So with that, again, welcome back. I'm delighted to be back in chambers with you all, or for the first time for some of you. And we will go on with our agenda. Our first item is disclosures and recusals. Are there any disclosures or recusals on any items on tonight's agenda? Seeing no, oh. Alder Foster?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know which number it is. The one that is the co-op financing one, just want to disclose that I am part of a co-op that could seek funding, but it won't influence my decision.
The clerk will find that and note it for
I
you.
look forward to, thanks.
Yep, thank you, Alder. Are there any other disclosures or recusals? Alder Abbas.
Same situation with me as Alder Foster. Will not impact my decision, but I'm also a member of the co-op as well.
Right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other disclosures or recusals on items on tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. President Furman.
Thank you, Mayor. A consent agenda is moved with recommended action listed for each item on the agenda, including public hearings, except 1, items which have registrants wishing to speak, 2, items which require an extraordinary roll call vote and are not included on the consent agenda by unanimous consent, 3, items which alders have separated out for discussion/debate purposes. This document lists extra majority items, additional agenda items with recommendations made from the floor, items requested for exclusion, and items introduced from the floor for referral. The following items are extra majority items. Extra majority vote items will be recorded as unanimous votes unless a roll call or exclusion is requested. Agenda item 54, legislative file number 72123, amending the 2022 Economic Development Division capital budget TID 42 for census study of impact of the city's investment in South Madison, 15 votes required. Agenda item 58, legislative file 72139, amending the operating budget for traffic engineering to accommodate increased costs for signage materials and training, 15 votes required. Agenda items part of the consent agenda with additional recommendations as noted. Agenda item 51, legislative file number 71984, recreate positions in the Metro operating budget. Recommended action is to refer this to the 7/19/22 Common Council meeting for adoption. Agenda item 86, legislative file 72259, amending ordinance related to the city trees in the Greenway. This was part of introduction of new business for referral without debate. The recommended action is to withdraw the introduction. Agenda item 104, legislative file 72466, related to a criminal justice grant, and this has an additional referral to the Board of Health for Madison-Dane County on 7/14/2022. Additional agenda item with recommendations made from the floor. Agenda item 52, legislative file 72106, approving the amendment to the project plan and boundary for TID 45, Capitol Square West. Report of the Finance Committee. Recommended action is adopt. Agenda item 53, legislative file 72107, approving the creation of the project plan and boundary for TID 50, State and Lake. Report of the Finance Committee. Recommended action is adopt. Items requested for exclusion by alders. Agenda item 12, legislative file 70642, substitute establishing a common council prohibited harassment and/or discrimination policy. Agenda item 40, legislative file 70645, MGO related to a self-evaluation of subunit meetings. Agenda item 41, legislative file 70650, cancellation of subunit meetings. Agenda item 42, legislative file 70667, substitute BCC self-evaluation form. Items requested for exclusion by registered speakers as of noon today. Agenda item 71, legislative file number 70637, City of Madison commits to the 5 principles of responsible outdoor lighting. And I do know additionally, we have agenda item 72, legislative file 71646, repealing section 10.085 entitled Outdoor Lighting and creating section 29.36 entitled Outdoor Lighting of the Madison General Ordinances.
All right, thank you, President Furman. Are there any additional items for exclusion from the consent agenda from any alders? Seeing none. Then just one more time, we have some additional recommendations on 51. It's a referral to 719. On 86, it's to withdraw the introduction. On 104, it's an additional referral to the Board of Health. On 714, on 52, the recommended action is to adopt. On 53, also to adopt. We are excluding 12, 40, 41, 42, 71, and 72. I'll ask again if there's any additional requests for exclusion, referrals, sponsorships. Seeing none, President Furman, a motion?
Move adoption of the consent agenda.
Alder Curry?
Heard.
All right. So, thank you, Alder. So one of the things that's different about being in person versus being on the Zooms is that traditionally, when we were in person, the alders would just call out a second. Everybody in the room can hear it. That is not actually true of people on Zoom. So people on Zoom can't hear you unless you're speaking into your microphone. But I think we're just going to feel our way through here. If you just want to call out the seconds, the clerk can just confirm that it was seconded by whichever alder seconds it, so that we don't have to go through a rigmarole on the microphones. All right, so it's been moved and seconded, the consent agenda. So, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda? So again, for those of you in person, you could just wave, you could say object. For those of you on the Zooms, you need to raise your hand. But I see no objection, so we will record a unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda. And that will take us to public comment. Let me just refresh, just in case.
Alder Evers is here.
And we will note that we've been joined by Alder Evers. Thank you, Alder. So the first item that we have speakers registered wishing to speak on is item 71. We have Ashley Wilson of Homestead, Florida, representing the International Dark Sky Association. I believe Ashley is on Zoom.
I'm here.
Go ahead, Ashley. And the clerk is pulling up your presentation.
Great.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Great. I would like to use this time to briefly go over the International Dark Sky Places program and what the community status would mean for Madison. The next slide. The International Dark Sky Association is a nonprofit organization based in Tucson, Arizona, with the mission to protect the night from light pollution. Our flagship program, the International Dark Sky Places program, serves our mission by encouraging places and advocates in actions such as policy, outreach and education, and responsible lighting solutions. IDA is not a regulatory authority, and if anything, our program serves more as a reward or recognition for exemplary efforts in this movement. It's completely voluntary to participate, and IDA does not select candidates to receive the certification. Rather, we review nominations that are brought to us. Next slide. There are several benefits of conserving dark skies. Most notably, we see that there are healthier communities and ecosystems. Dark sky friendly lighting is also community friendly. If we use these lights in best practice, we can reduce the harmful short or blue wavelengths that have been shown to disrupt circadian rhythms, which can lead to long-term health effects with long-term exposure. It also increases visibility in heavy traffic areas like intersections, so it actually helps pedestrians and vehicles see better. And it also increases our sense of safety in public spaces at night. There are also several reports that show financial benefits, not only in tourism, such as increases in jobs and revenue, but also general savings owing to reduced energy usage. Transitioning to LEDs is more efficient compared to traditional sources like high pressure sodium. And it means that you get the same amount of light needed for communities for a fraction of the energy and the cost. Madison also has a chance to be recognized as a world-leading community. We only have 38 certified communities worldwide, and Madison would be without a doubt the largest community certified. All these actions help maintain top-tier sky quality above and outside the community. So all these actions would be a win-win situation for your community. Next slide. IDA requests 4 major actions for a successful application. The first would be to adopt a lighting policy, as you're discussing today. Once that policy is in place, the next step would be to retrofit lights throughout the community to reduce excessive and wasteful light pollution. We also ask for ongoing efforts in outreach and education, as well as monitoring night sky quality. And these actions are not only required for the application, but are ongoing years after and reporting in reports. And then the last slide just has my contact information. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our only registrant wishing to speak on item 71. Are there questions for the registrant? Seeing none, thank you. And then our next item is item 72. Again, we have one registrant, David Aguayo of District 4, representing the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce. David, pick your side.
Good.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Alders and Mayor. My name is David Aguayo. I'm here with the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce. Before I get started, I do want to say thank you for making this a hybrid meeting. I've been waiting a long time to be here with you all, and I'm super excited for moving forward to the meetings that will be hybrid. But I'm here tonight regarding item 72 on your agenda. This item proposes a change to the Madison ordinances for outdoor lighting. It's related to item 71, which is a resolution that adopts principles for maintaining dark skies. The intent of the resolution is understandable. We all enjoy seeing our dark sky, and that's something that we can agree on. Changing the ordinance to reflect new standards for outdoor lighting, however, come with many questions and answers to date on what that impact will be. Here's what we know. Adopting this ordinance would change the minimum threshold for requiring lighting that is full cutoff or shielded from 1,000 lumens to 500. Notably, it does not change any other parts of the existing outdoor lighting requirements. Currently, the ordinances provide an exemption for lighting installed prior to March 30th, 1993. presumably at the time when new thresholds had been introduced. As a reminder, there is already an exemption on the books. These exemptions are important policy decisions when you acknowledge a substantial volume of something that is currently in compliance will become non-compliant. If adopted, we don't know how many outdoor lights are installed in compliance today that would be in non-compliance tomorrow. But cutting the threshold in half without an updated exemption for existing compliant lighting stands to reason that there will be an impact. We just don't know how big or how small or how costly it will be. It is our understanding that this ordinance change is largely intended to address residential lighting such as floodlights. While I'm here tonight on advocacy of affected businesses, it should be noted that both residences and commercial buildings that install floodlights to do so with the safety and security in mind. It's not clear that changing this threshold for existing lighting will have the same impact for the property owner. We appreciate the responsiveness from both alders and staff to our questions, but we believe the intent is not to be overly disruptive to the businesses at a time when they are already faced with numerous and unprecedented costs and challenges. But tonight, since the question on impact is still unknown, I would encourage you to work to find a solution that is a win-win, that provides more clarity and certainty on the impact while addressing the intended problem. I think this can be accomplished with an exception for lights installed from March 30th, 1993 to the present day. A referral
That's
to a
time.
later date to have
Sorry,
further
that's time.
discussion.
That's your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's our only registrant wishing to speak on item 72. Are there questions for the registrant? Alder Carter. Go ahead.
Thank you,
Alder.
Mayor. Can we give the speaker one more minute to conclude?
Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, go ahead.
Thank you, Alder.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. So as I was saying, I think we can accomplish this win-win situation if we have an exemption for lights installed from March 30th, 1993 to the present day. A referral to a later date would have further discussion on the potential implications is also a welcome solution. There's more work that needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for our registrant? Alder Abbas.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. So I see in your comment you're asking for a referral for additional time. I'm curious on this particular ordinance, did you talk to the sponsor, staff? Why do you need additional time? I just want to understand.
Yes, so I thank you, Alder. I did have conversations with alders. I had some communications with the sponsors and city staff as well. And originally we had thought, that this would apply moving forward to new construction. With new information that we had from one of the lead sponsors is that this would then require a retrofit of all lights, residential and commercial. So that raised a new set of questions, a new set of concerns, which some I explained here today. So a referral would allow us to continue to dig into those specific scenarios and questions and address those.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any additional questions? Alder Bennett.
Is it on?
Yep.
Oh, okay, cool. So I was wondering, I'm trying to understand why you're asking to keep the lights as they were since 1973 or the
1993.
1993. What if they're not in compliance with these standards or they aren't being used to the best as they should be?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, the reason why 1993 is being referred to is because that is in the ordinance. In 1993, or in 2014, 2015 is when this, excuse me, I don't know the exact date, but in 1993 was when they asked anything prior to 1993 would be excluded from this, but moving forward, that's when the new lighting standards would apply. So if they're not in compliance today, then that's an enforcement question. That's not a question about this policy. So, if they're not in compliance today, they won't be in compliance tomorrow, regardless of if this bill is passed, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions for our registrant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
And that, I believe, is our public comment. Let me just refresh to make sure. Yep, that is public comment for tonight. So we'll go to the exclusion list, starting with item 12. President Furman.
Move referral to the Common Council Executive Committee on October 5th and the Common Council on October 11th.
So moved and seconded to refer, I'm sorry, can you say those dates again?
Sure, the Common Council Executive Committee on October 5th and the Common Council on October 11th.
All right, it's moved and seconded to refer. We'll just run through all the things so that we settle into our routine here. Are there questions for staff on item 12? Seeing none, the motion is to refer. Is there discussion on item 12? Alder Wahilahi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I excluded this item because I feel it has been spent a lot of time from staff. There are alders who have spent a lot of time, including Alder Abbas, the city staff, including Karen, Attorney Haas, and we had presentation at the CCAC meeting on April 19 to talk about this particular ordinance. And the reason for this policy is to uphold and promote the highest standard of ethics from the Madison Common Council as elected officials. Most of the discussion that has happened, everybody agreed that there's a need. And I think my question is to refer, I agree and I support to refer, but I think, based on the conversation I heard, is having different work group will not be able to solve this particular ordinance. A lot of time has been spent. So I would like to know what actions would be happening between now and October 5th and October 11th, and I will be happy to, hear what needs to be said. That being said, as the ordinance itself, it needs some work, and I support that. But then having the work group, I don't agree with this. So I'm just curious, as the CCC committee members who said that they want to create a work group based on what? I'm just curious to learn about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Continuing discussion, Alder Curry.
Thank you, Mayor. I can respond to Alder Rahili. So the intent for moving forward with this item is to not necessarily disregard the work and intention that's been put forward within it, but agreeing with Alder Rahili that it does need some work. And part of that is the inclusion of resources or tools. If we alders or as a body find ourselves needing to resort to policy regarding code, regarding anti-discrimination and harassment, the conversation at the CCEC meeting was regarding wanting some more time to build in some of the resources that also have been worked on by several alders. And the intent for myself, as I made that motion, was to create a work group to establish a Common Council code of conduct. So it's my hope that a code of conduct will not only provide expectations and guidelines for conduct, but also serve as a guiding factor and provide tools and resources to better our practices as a whole. Additionally, the work group will be doing their work in the open to promote transparency and legitimacy, as a code of conduct will affect us all. And as a reminder to alders, The deadline for that is coming up tomorrow to notify me to move forward with that work group. But thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Wahila here for the second time on the item.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you. So my question is, knowing that our Common Council staff is have a very shortage of staff, who is going to staff this as the work group? We talk about lack of resources within the Common Council, but also, we just heard that Debbie is not able to do some of the work that she has been doing, and if Karen is going to staff this, knowing the situation, the council having just 2 staff between now and October, how will that happen to staff at the Common Council staff?
So before we go on with the queue, let me point out an excellent feature of being in the same room together, which is you are all sitting near each other. And if you have questions about items, you can turn around with your mics off and ask them and perhaps get them answered. Just pointing out that feature of being in the same room together. Thank you, Alder. President Furman.
Thank you, Mayor. The intent for this committee is for council staff to staff the committee. The council staff currently certainly doesn't have the capacity, but there will be a new hire shortly, and there will be additional hires shortly. I want to make clear this October 11th date is something that Alder Healy requested for it to come back to the council. So this is not a date that was generated out of discussion at CCEC, generated out of CCEC. So I think we'll have an opportunity in October to find out what's going on. I don't know if that work by that subcommittee will be done by then, but at least the council can decide what they would like to be further actions at that point. But there certainly would be capacity as we bring on more people in the council office for that to be staffed. The committee will obviously work around staff availability to make sure that it's an open process for any alder besides just the people that are on the work group to participate if they wish to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter.
Thank you, Mayor. My question on twofold. Number one, I recall a comment from my colleagues about our committees and work groups, that they are transparent and open because any one of us can attend. And if you can attend, they're recorded, and any one of us can listen to the recorded meeting. So I think that this work group is no different from the last work group in the transparency and the open meetings, in the sense that any one of us can attend and any one of us can read the recorded meeting. My question is this an implementation work group? If it's an implementation work group, then I would prefer to hear that. I can tell you that my years on the council, which is not a lot of years, and I'm sure some people can go further back than me, that the trying to have some kind of policy on harassment and discrimination has been a long, weary road, and many have carried that water. So what makes it different today? That's my question. And is this an implementation work group?
Thank you, Alder. Alder Abbas.
Yeah, thank you so much. A couple of thoughts I will share as well. We as a body, if let's say we decide October as a date, that's as a body of it, we decide. I heard from colleague saying that We are not sure we could be done in the time or not, or Alder Vihele presented this. I appreciate Alders presenting a date and setting some milestone or a deadline. Expectations are extremely key on these type of policies which protect city staff, not only Alders. But I will not like to see that throwing one alder and saying, well, that alder put that date and we are not able to, that date was not realistic. This is our opportunity. If you guys or my fellow alders feel differently about a date, say it. We can discuss it and we can set those expectations right. Because when it comes back, I would love to see that being passed and move forward. It's been such a long time and we have history, not this council, but we have history to do study after study after study after study and keep studying things and not implementing stuff. And this is extremely important. So I will really say, if somebody have ideas here around work group, I'm not sure what that work group is going to achieve. I'm not clear about it. I heard CCEC meeting. If there is more clarification, please provide. And I really want to see this referral, the report to come back with recommendation. If you need more time and if people have different ideas, please speak now. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadze.
Yes, I guess my question is this. Given the selection of work groups, how, I guess this is to Vice President, how are we selecting the work group? I have a really concern about how we're selecting certain committees or work groups. So how are we selecting them?
Thank you, Alder. I'll just take the opportunity to remind us all that in these meetings, you need to be addressing the chair, not each other. That's Robert's rules. So if you have comments, I don't mean to particularly select people, but I think Alder Benford is very good at this. He always starts his comments addressing the chair. I appreciate that about you, Alder Benford. If you have comments, you should address the chair. If you have questions, you may ask them of the chair. None of you are obligated to answer each other's questions on the floor, which again is why I suggest to you that we're all in the same room together and you could ask each other questions not as part of the debate. Of course, you all can get in touch with each other at any other point in time to ask each other questions as well. But I just want to clarify that under Robert's rules, questions do not go to other members of the body, they go to the chair.
I apologize, Madam Mayor. I asked Keith, President Keith, and he told me to refer to Vice President, so sorry about that.
That's all right. It's good for us to all have the reminder, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do so. I have no other alders in the queue. Alder Wahila, this is the third time on the item.
I know.
And I would just like to, again, take the opportunity to remind us all that the rules that this body adopted for itself are that each alder should only speak twice on one item and for a total of 10 minutes. So I'll allow it this time, Alder, but I would like us to remember the rules that you all have adopted for yourselves. Alder Wahila.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm sorry that I have to speak 3 times. So one last thing I want to say is there was a work group before this council, and former Alder Marshall Rummel was leading that. And I read the report, and it was not really conclusive because of lack of time. Based on the conversation we had at the CCEC, there were three challenges with the current ordinance as it is. One is one of the alder recommended that we need to expand beyond the alders, but more to the even all the citywide for appointed staff and mayor. The second piece of discussion was to have restorative justice solution through the training if there is a problem. And third is having an opportunity to have a mediation, third-party mediation for this ordinance, should there be any disagreement. So based on that, if we are working, the reason why I put October 11th is, we don't need work group. These are some of the explanation, like the comment that was made at the CCC. This is what's missing at the current ordinance. And if we can expand based on what was recommended, we don't need work group and we don't have to use this, the council staff to put more time on that. So I hope based on what the recommendation was, put forward at the CCC, we can be able to implement this ordinance by October 11th.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. The motion before us is referral of this item to the 10-5 CCEC meeting and the 10-11 council meeting. Alder Miadze for the second time on the motion.
No, I guess I should address the question to you. So I guess, how is the work group going to be chosen?
Alder, as I articulated before, if your colleagues wish to respond to that, they're free to ring in and do so. But I think that that's a conversation that could easily take place, not on the floor of the council.
Okay.
Thank you, Alder. All right, the motion is to refer. Is there objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of referral? Alder Wahilahi?
I would like to make a motion to refer without work group, but based on the recommended suggestions at the CCC.
Alder, the motion is simply to refer. There's nothing in the motion that addresses a work group or recommendations or anything else. It's just to refer.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, thank you, Alder. Alder Carter.
Roll call.
A roll call has been requested. So let me pause for a process moment. Since a roll call has been requested and since you all can't be heard unless your mics are on the Zoom, what we will do is not turn your mics on for the roll call, but the clerk will repeat the roll, right? So the clerk will repeat the alder's name and the vote. So your job here, if you're in the room, is simply to say aye or nay. Similarly on Zoom, and the clerk will confirm and then count up the roll and tell us the result. Alder Bennett, a process question?
Do we need to turn on our mics?
No, that's what I'm saying, Alder, is that you
I'll
can
turn on
just
mics.
cast your vote verbally and the clerk will confirm it.
Okay.
Thank you, Alder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry.
So, thank you.
Sorry.
We're all just going to figure it out here together. So the motion is to refer item 12 to the 10-5 CCEC meeting and the 10-11 Common Council meeting. All those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Alder Carter.
Aye.
Alder Carter, aye. Alder Conklin. Aye. Alder Conklin, aye. Alder Curry. Aye. Alder Curry, aye. Alder Evers.
Aye.
Alder Evers, aye. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Aye.
Alder Figueroa Cole, aye. Alder Foster. Alder Foster, aye. Alder Furman. Aye. Alder Furman, aye. Alder Halverson is excused. Alder Harrington McKinney.
I'm abstaining.
Alder Harrington McKinney abstains. Alder Heck. Aye. Alder Heck, aye. Alder Miadze. Alder Miadze, Alder Paulson. Aye. Alder Paulson, aye. Alder Fair. Aye. Alder Fair, aye. Alder Tischler. Alder Tischler, aye. Alder Verveer. Aye. Alder Verveer, aye. Alder Vitever is excused. Alder Wahilahi. Aye. Alder Wahilahi, aye. Alder Abbas. Alder Abbas, aye. Alder Benford.
Aye.
Alder Benford, aye. Alder Bennett.
Aye.
Alder Bennett, aye. Enthusiastic, aye. We have 17 ayes and 1 abstention.
Thank you. With 17 ayes, that item passes, and that will take us to item 40. Item 40 is Legistar 70645, creating sections of the Madison General Ordinances to add a self-evaluation of sub-unit meetings. On item 40, Alder Furman.
Mayor, if there's not an objection, I would suggest that we take up item 40 with item 42 since they're both related.
Is there any objection to us taking up items 40 and 42 together? Seeing no objection, we will take items 40 and 42 together.
And
So a motion on both.
I would just say item 42 is legislative file 70667, which is a substitute adopting a boards, commission, and committee BCC member self-evaluation form to improve the communication and equitable engagement of members. So for both those items, the motion would be to move to place on file without prejudice.
All right, so the motion on items 40 and 42 is to place on file without prejudice. Are there questions for staff on items 40 and 42? Alder, is it a question for staff? Alder Wahilihi? Alder Wahilihi? Is it a question for staff? No. All right. Are there any questions for staff on items 40 and 42? Seeing no questions for staff on items 40 and 42, is there discussion on the motion to place on file without prejudice? Alder Wahilihi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I excluded these two items based on being on the President Work Group on Racial Justice, Equity, and Anti-Racism. And the focus for that work group was the streamlining the BCC. So some of the recommendations were help BCC members to connect with the why of what they are doing, making sure they are devoting their time and resources meaningful way and activities. Make sure every BCC has knows their missions, connection to the city vision, mission, values, and in public service. So the recommendations goes on and on, but one of the main thing is how we can really change the culture of the BCC. And Madam Mayor, as we invited you at that work group, one of the challenges that you expressed was the retention. And the retention is how our BCC members, whether they are from the marginalized communities or others, sometimes there's no clear expectation and responsibilities that are put forward. So with that, we are making recommendations from the work group to implementation. I have met with Leila, and we are meeting with you in next week just to see the implementation in how we can improve the self-evaluation. So basically, what I've talked to a couple of elders, including the work group, to have some kind of pilot project where people can see if this is really working or not. So my request or my motion is to refer for future meeting in October 25, where other BCC members or chairs can see and have a pilot. And at that time, if the body feels that there's no need for an ordinance, then we can discuss in October 25th council meeting. So my motion is to refer to future meeting in October 25th so that we can look into the implementation plan from the work group. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. There's a motion to refer to the 10:25 council meeting. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Abbas. All right, so the motion before us is referral to the 10:25 council meeting. Is there discussion on the question of referral? Alder Benford.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, as I followed the progress of this, having served on the President's Work Group, I have to tell you, I was a little surprised that this was placed on file without prejudice, but I think Alder Wahili, this motion gives us a way to explore and look at other opportunities, as we all have stated from the beginning that we have deep concern about the BCCs for many reasons, but the key thing that I've often seen missing in our conversation is that citizen input, the folks that take times out of their busy days to serve on our bodies. And I really believe, and I think as did the other members of the work group, that this was a good step into ensuring that it was meaningful service. And as Alder Wahili said, retention and just having really that visceral feeling that you are serving the city. So I hope that we could refer this and continue to look at this along with other conversations around BCCs. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too was somewhat surprised that this was placed on file. And the reason being is that we talk about the boards, committees, and commissions being the lifeline of the city, and to look at efficiency, to look at self-evaluation, how effective we are, and the workability. And I think that it is time for not only Alder serving on BCCs, but also the resident members to do an evaluation of how we're doing. And the only way that we are going to move forward and have an efficient, effective working group of boards, committees, and commissions is to evaluate ourselves. And so I was very surprised that this was recommended to be placed on file without prejudice. We really do need to move forward, and this is a way to move forward. If we're serious about having an effective undergirding of boards, committees, and commissions, self-evaluations, it's the way that we do it, and we move toward that goal. And so I would hope that the body agrees that this will be at least a step forward and not have us stuck in talking about what's not working in boards, committees, and commissions, but also taking a step of how do we evaluate ourselves to move ourselves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Fair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think at this point I could support referral just because I haven't heard what action will happen between now and October to change this. So the question through the chair, I guess, would be if anyone wants to comment on who's going to lead up the work, what work's going to happen clearly, and when we get back here in October, how is this going to be different? Are boards going to be organized and chairs are going to come together, and are there going to be clear actions? I haven't heard any of that, so I don't really understand the motion, I guess. So at this point, I don't think I could support it.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. So, question for you. Can you please explain again what does it mean to put something on file without prejudice?
Absolutely, Alder.
Thank you.
When an item is placed on file, it simply means that the council is not agreeing to it. So it's not a no vote on it. If you wanted to sort of, this is going to sound strange, if you wanted to affirmatively say no to an item, you would make a different motion. But it basically placing on file is saying, we're not doing this. Placing it on file without prejudice means that it can be brought back before you at any time. If you place it on file with prejudice or just simply place it on file, you have to wait a certain period of time before a similar item could be brought back. Placing on file without prejudice means that it can come back before this body at any point in time.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely, Alder. Thank you. Alder Bennett.
Yes. Oh, well, I kind of want to follow up on what Alder Fair said and just put that out as a question if you'd like to answer. I would like to know what would happen between now and October. But to the response that, being surprised, I know that from what I recall from the CCEC meeting is that we decided to make this motion because there were just some process things that we wanted to understand further. One of the things was having the self-evaluation form after every meeting seems a bit excessive. And two, who would be handling this? Is it just the staff and the chair, the staff and the vice chair, et cetera, et cetera? And the difference between BCCs, I think we want to allow them to understand their culture, because what works for water utility probably won't work for plan commission. So that's why we did that. And if between now and October 25th, you will be able to work out those kinks, I personally would be okay with like referring, because I do think that it's important. But I also think that, as you just noted, we don't have to set October 25th as a date. You can make changes to it and then bring it back whenever, because it's being placed on file without prejudice, or if we do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Alder Evers.
Thank you, Mayor. I will not be supporting referral, not because I don't have concerns about BCCs. I most certainly do, concerns that many of you share. But the concerns that I have are more that we have too many of them, for one. And not that, and I don't think that the problems that we have with our boards, committees, and commissions system would be resolved by having self-evaluation forms so much as us really taking, scrutinizing the number and getting to the point where we're retiring the excessive number of committees. I've never been in support of this ordinance change because I think it smacks of micromanaging our BCC process. The committees that I've been on, without exception, each one of them are different, but they all take seriously the responsibility they have. And I think our residents who are on this, who are chairing these committees, should not be burdened with an additional self-evaluation process to go on at the conclusion of each meeting. But they all engage in various types of self-evaluation and very proactive type of work, often at the beginning of a term, and then checking in with each other on a regular basis, inviting Annette Miller of Equity by Design and folks like that to be able to speak to the committee's process to make sure it's equitable and just. But I don't think it's our job to micromanage our BCCs. That's not what ails us, the lack of that at this point. And I think it's imprudent and inappropriate for us to do so. And so I won't be supporting this at any point, whether it comes back now in October or a year from now. I think it's the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Abbas.
Thank you so much. So I can give a little history, share some stories with my colleague, and perhaps they can put some content. I really appreciate what the President Work Group on Racial Justice, this recommendation came out. We as a policymaker is data-driven, and we do data-driven policy. I don't see as micromanagement, because we do this all the time with MPD, asking for data. We do with other departments. As a policymaker, we have rights to ask, and these committees provide us recommendation and guidelines. So if we asking to collect feedback and data, I do not see any direction of really micromanaging them. That's not our role. I think this is a really solid policy document, not perfect. Okay, I can agree, might be asking every meeting to fill the form, might be that can be discussed. I also agreed talking to various chair of the committees, build some confidence with, I think so that's what I'm understanding. That is the intent of the refer, to talk to various committee chairs. I will give two examples here and why I think so this is important. And then, it's up to the body how they want to proceed. Example number one, when I was a vice president, we had incident in one of the committee where on the basis of race and discrimination, 2 members quit, and they took that issue into social media and into newspaper. We do not have any mechanism to do some preventive work or try to understand from committee members how they're feeling about their own committee. This survey, if it's not accurate, at least it provide a direction and open opportunity for dialogue to understand. That's number one. Number second, Civilian Oversight Board. As a council president, during my time, I attended many of those meetings. And I cannot tell you, I have to be careful how I say that. I have seen many problems. I don't think this survey is going to solve all, but it's going to give you some direction and reflection how people are feeling, what resources we have to provide. And I agree, Madam Chair, with some of the comments about various nonprofits providing training. But those trainings will come once we have that data. I really don't think it's a good precedent for us as a council to leave those issues unnoticed. And these are only two. There are many other, by the way. I'm just sharing two big. I think so this is a good direction. And if the sponsor is willing to refer this, spend some time with the staff, we should let it allow to do it. Regarding, I heard this refer without prejudice, with prejudice. If we do with prejudice, it can come back. The intent of the council, what they are telling the sponsor is, we do not agree to implement right now, however, we allow you to come back. That doesn't seem like really motivational to me. If that happened with me, I was like, well, why should I bring it back? Because these people doesn't want to see this happening. And the second thing, it sent a message of resources. Resources are really lean right now. If we keep this on agenda item, then staff know they have to work. The committee know this have to come back to the council, and Alder can have opportunity to work with these people. I think so it's a mistake to not allow Alder to referral. And this is a step in a backward rather than going forward, because I don't hear from other side any solution, how they're going to deal with those issues. And I agree, the issue of many committees, that's a separate issue. That's issue for I don't know how many decades of now, and we never solve it. So I will really encourage people not to take that opportunity away and give that opportunity to the sponsor to refer this. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Paulson.
Yes, so thank you. I just wanted to summarize a few things from CCEC. I think at CCEC, the general consensus was that there's a lot of good stuff in this ordinance, but it's not quite cooked, and it needs to go back to the kitchen a little bit and get stirred a little bit more. And I think people are excited about doing that. I had coffee with Alder Rahili the other day, and we talked about some ideas and actually being able to potentially take this to a couple committees. Both of us serve on the Economic Development Committee, and we're thinking about taking it there and asking them to try some of these things, try out some different strategies. So to my colleague who was wondering about perhaps what is going to happen with this, we've got some ideas about how to take a look at this. To some of my other colleagues who have expressed doubt about this ever working, I hope you'll keep an open mind as we get out and explore this. I honestly don't have a strong opinion about referring it versus placing it on file without prejudice. It feels like procedurally it winds up in the same spot. We can refer it in October. If we're not quite ready to go, we can just refer it again. I'm actually not sure that we're ready to go in October, just given the calendar is going to take us a couple weeks to figure out something. Then we need a little bit of time for each of the committees to have some experience. So I'm actually not sure October is quite the right time. November or December might feel a little bit better. But either way, wherever we go with this, our options are place it on file without prejudice so we can bring it back, or put it off in the future when we know we're going to bring it back. And so I hope we don't spend a lot more time debating this, because I think we're all going to wind up in the same spot at the end of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Rahili for the second time on the item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, Alder Paulson and Alder Abbas said what I want to say. Based on the CCC comment, the ordinance as it is, there are some works that needs to be done, and to have a pilot, some of the questions need to be modified and amended, and that's the reason why I'm referring to certain time, so that we have something on the schedule so we can work on it and bring something substance back to the council. And for those people who are doubting about this, like Alder Paulson said, it's not just because this ordinance is not really needed, but I think if we bring back, we're not implementing or we're not adapting tonight. We're just allowing ourselves to study and have some kind of some pilot program with some of the committees that we serve on and see the benefit of it. And just modifying and asking some of the chairs and co-chairs for those BCC. There are 3 areas that we can work on. There's 3 questions. One is the chair can decide someone who can be an observer. The committee can discuss at the end of the meeting, or the committee can decide at the end of quarterly. So basically, there are 3 ways that the ordinance can be implemented, and it's not a hardcore that we're going to vote on it tonight, but just kind of exercising and seeing how we can be able to implement. And then we can, if it comes back to October and we feel it's not something that we want to move on, then we can vote on that, October. So I hope my colleagues will vote on this for the referral so that we can at least test if this is going to work for the BCCs.
Thank you, Alder Evers.
Thank you, Mayor,
for the second time.
Yeah, and I'll make sure. I just want to make clear to my colleagues, I was on that committee that Alder Abbas was referring to, the Sustainable Madison Committee, when that problem erupted. And I can say with complete certainty, the source of that problem would not have been addressed by a survey or evaluation form or some kind of self-evaluation process taking place at the end of every meeting. That was a rather human and emotional, complicated response to a complicated situation. The co-chairs of that committee responded diligently and intentionally to address the challenges around that. So there isn't, in my mind, this is a solution in the search of a problem, very much. And I take seriously the testimony, the public comment from the chair of the Transportation Commission, who did kind of make it suggest that we were trying to micromanage individual BCCs with this change. I have complete confidence that our residents who are chairing these committees take seriously their obligation, and we do not need to burden them further in order for our committees to function properly. So again, this is a solution in search of a problem. There are many problems with our BCCs. The absence of a self-evaluation process is not one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter?
Thank you, Mayor. I hope that my colleagues will allow this process, the pilot, to go forward. I can tell you that if it doesn't go forward, we will be in the same position that we've been in for the past many years. We will still have 100+ committees. And if that's what you want, then vote against it. I can tell you during my short time on the council, only one committee has been sunset. And ironically, that committee started a Friends Committee, and they're still going strong today. So I would hope that we would be able to allow this work to be done as a pilot. And hey, if it doesn't work, we'll know it. But at least let's do it. And if we can do it with a few committees, not every committee, then even better. That's my hope. Again, if not, then we'll still have 100 committees and more work groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole for the second time.
Thank you, Mayor. So can you clarify, is the motion on the table to create a pilot?
Alder, the motion is to refer to the 1025 Common Council meeting.
Okay, thank you. So yes, I will not be supporting this motion stated on the CCEC meeting. I am all for self-evaluations, but I don't think it is appropriate for us to impose this on community members that are volunteering their time on these meetings. Thanks to the magic of Zoom, we have seen an increase of public participation. So having committees to stay longer than they already are during these meetings to fill a form, I just don't see that as an effective use of time, nor that I see that as an effective use of data to be collected. So I won't be supporting this particular motion. There's nothing preventing anyone to continue to do the work and come back with something better. But I think, I mean, this should be a suggestion, not a ordinance. That's my take on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Heck.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to briefly contrast our discussion of this item with the previous agenda item, where the motion to refer was approved by council, and that was the original motion. I think the difference between this and that situation is this, that when we were discussing the anti-discrimination and harassment policy, I think all of us agreed that the goal is a good one, and that we just have some disagreement about how to get there, and we supported referral because we want to make sure there's some concrete progress made, and the folks that will work on it, this subcommittee will report back in October. In this circumstance, it's different because I think there's some fundamental disagreement about the issue at hand. And the survey itself, as we discussed at length at CCEC, works well for the Water Utility Board, great. But in our discussion, it was pretty clear that a lot of us felt like it wouldn't be very useful, either in this form or some slightly altered form for many other BCCs. That doesn't mean that some form of survey might not work, but I think it was clear quite a few of us disagreed with this particular survey and whether or not it would offer much. There might be many other tools, as many others have mentioned tonight, to improving BCCs, and we heard a lot about that from the Transportation Commission chair at CCEC. But I think the difference between these two agenda items is clear, in that placing it on file without prejudice is the appropriate motion. And in many ways, as Alder Paulson said, it gives the sponsors some freedom to come back whenever they like, if they should come up with some ideas sooner. But my experience with Plan Commission in particular is that placing something on file without prejudice is an indication that the body would like to see substantial changes, not just minor changes. Referral oftentimes is, we just need one clarification or something like that, at least in Plan Commission tradition. So in that sense, I'll be not supporting the motion to refer. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadze.
I'll be brief. I think everybody pretty much has a lot of different points of views, but I guess bringing it back home, I think it's important to probably refer it, to give this time to be worked out. I believe we owe it to ourselves. I think we owe it to the city of Madison, the people that definitely elected us, in order to make sure that we're held accountable. I think this ordinance does that. I think I agree with some of my colleagues that said that it might be a little excessive. So I think there's time we can work some of this out. So I think it's important to really refer this and really think about it and digest this. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter, for the second time.
No, at the appropriate time, I want a roll call.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Bennett, also for the second time.
Yes, I'll try to be brief. I just want to say about like the Sustainable Madison Committee, frankly, it's like one opinion, but as someone that is close with the other part of that party of that, I don't know if they would have the same opinion. And there are issues on our BCCs that I think that the purpose of this is to provide an opportunity for reflection, nip things in the bud before they get started. I don't really see why that's like a horrible thing. Again, I think that BCC should just be able to set their own questions or self-reflection, self-evaluation form, have some leeway for that. If we need more time for that, that's fine. But I think at this point, it's just talking to be just talking, and we all know how we're going to vote. And either way we're going to vote is the same way, the same answer. So I think it has the self-evaluation form has merit in general, and I'd like to get on with it, the vote.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney for the second time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. These are the points that I jotted down. One, we have too many BCCs, boards, committees, and commissions. I joined my alder when he said that. Second is that this body has passed legislation and solutions looking for our problems. So this is not new. But the main thing that I want to address is that some BCCs and the chairs operate with the highest degree of efficiency. Some boards, committees, and commissions do not. It gives us an opportunity to move in that direction and ultimately to look at which BCCs we can sunset. And to date, the number that we have sunset has been very, very limited. I will be supporting this because it keeps actively looking at how can, number one, we look at if there's any duplicacy in our BCCs. We can look at the effectiveness, and it is a start moving forward. And so I will be supporting the referral for additional work, and rather than placing it on file, to make sure that this work continues so that we can have efficient, effective BCC boards, committees, and commissions.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. So the motion on the floor is to refer items 40 and 42 to the 10/25 Common Council meeting. A roll call has been requested. So all those in favor of referral, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Alder Carter.
Aye.
Alder Carter, aye. Alder Conklin. No. Alder Conklin, no. Alder Curry. No. Alder Curry, no. Alder Evers.
No.
Alder Evers, no. Alder Figueroa Cole. No. Alder Figueroa Cole, no. Alder Foster. No. Alder Foster, no. Alder Furman. No. Alder Furman, no. Alder Halverson is excused. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Yes.
Alder Harrington McKinney, aye. Alder Heck. No. Alder Heck, no. Alder Miadze. Yes. Alder Miadze, aye. Alder Paulson.
Yes.
Alder Paulson, aye. Alder Fair.
No.
Alder Fair, no. Alder Tischler. Alder Tischler abstains. Alder Verveer. No. Alder Verveer is no. Alder Vidver is excused. Alder Woodhellier. Aye. Alder Woodhellier, aye. Alder Boss. Aye. Alder Boss, aye. Alder Benford.
Aye.
Alder Benford, aye. Alder Bennett. Aye. Alder Bennett, aye. We have 8 ayes, 9 noes, 1 abstention.
With 8 ayes, the motion fails. I'll take the opportunity to remind us that a motion needs to pass by 11 votes regardless of the number of alders that are present. That's a little bit different from most voting. So just to remind us that unless it's it requires an extraordinary number of votes. For example, we have 14 vote items, 15 vote items. Our regular items require 11 votes to pass. So that those items, or that motion fails. That brings us back to the original motion, which is to place on file without prejudice. I hesitate to ask, but is there additional discussion on the motion to place on file? Seeing no additional discussion, Alder Carter, you want a roll call, let me guess.
Correct.
All right, a roll call has been requested. The motion before us, Alder Paulson.
So I have a point of order. If this motion fails, what happens?
Then we're looking for another motion. Right, so the motion before us is to place items 40 and 42 on file without prejudice. All those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Alder Carter.
No.
Alder Carter, no. Alder Conklin.
Yep, the motion is to place on file without prejudice. Vote aye if you would like to place the item on file without prejudice. Vote no if you would not like to do that.
Alder Conklin, no. Alder Curry. Alder Curry, aye. Alder Evers.
Aye.
Alder Evers, aye. Alder Figueroa Cole. Aye. Alder Figueroa Cole, aye. Alder Foster. Aye. Alder Foster, aye. Alder Furman. Aye. Alder Furman, aye. Alder Halverson is excused. Alder Harrington McKinney.
No.
Alder Harrington McKinney, no. Alder Heck. Aye. Alder Heck, aye. Alder Miadze. Alder Miadze, no. Alder Paulson.
Aye.
Alder Paulson, aye. Alder Fair. Aye. Alder Fair, aye. Alder Tischler. Aye. Alder Tischler, aye. Alder Verveer. Aye. Alder Verveer, aye. Alder Vitever is excused. Alder Wahelier. No. Alder Wahelier is no. Alder Abbas. Alder Abbas is no. Alder Benford.
No.
Alder Benford is no. Alder Bennett. Alder Bennett is aye. 11 ayes, 7 noes.
With 11 ayes, the motion to place on file without prejudice passes. That is both items 40 and 42. So that will take us back to, there we go. That will take us back to item 41, which is Legistar 70650, amending sections of the Madison General Ordinances regarding the cancellation of subunit meetings. On item 41, President Furman.
Move place on file without prejudice.
Moved and seconded to place on file without prejudice. On item 41, are there questions for staff? Seeing no questions for staff, is there discussion on item 41? Alder Wahili.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, I'm okay with this for on file without prejudice as we are making the implementation for PCC for the President Work Group. So hopefully I'll bring back at a later time.
Thank you, Alder. Is there further discussion on item 41? Seeing none, the motion is to place on file without prejudice. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of placing item 41 on file without prejudice. And that will take us, actually, let me pause for just a moment. I meant to do this earlier in our meeting, but I will do it now. I understand that some of you have requested that I give you a little bit of a regular check-in on how many items we still have on the agenda, where we are in the meeting, and if I can remember it, to tell you how many folks we still have in the queue. Obviously, that last piece is not relevant at the moment because there is an item in front of us, but we do have 2 items left on our agenda, and I will endeavor to give you that update earlier in our meetings next time. Sorry. All right, so that takes us to item 71 and 72, and as these two are closely related, is there any objection to us taking up items 71 and 72 together? Seeing no objection, President Furman.
Move adoption.
Moved and seconded to adopt items 71 and 72. We do have a staff presentation, so I will ask Mr. Tucker, you're sitting in that one, to give us that presentation. And we'll give the clerk a moment to bring the slides up.
Sure. Hello, Council. It's nice to see all your faces and you four that are on the TV. Kyle Bueno is actually going to walk us through this. He is on the Zoom, and so we're going to try a multimedia presentation. Let him take it over.
Hybrid presentation as well as meeting. Kyle, you should be able to unmute yourself. If you can't, raise your hand, please.
I am here. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. So I've been asked to give this presentation to discuss items 71 and 72, addressing the outdoor lighting regulations and changes. And I was asked by Alders Foster and Evers to just have a brief overview of what is placed in front of you and some history here. So next slide, please. So the outdoor lighting ordinance, as it currently stands, is in MGO 10.085. That is in the streets, alleys, and sidewalks section of the Madison General Ordinances. It was adopted on March 30th of 1993 with the intent to prevent light trespass, conserve energy, and maintain night safety, as well as limiting light pollution throughout the city. It is intended to regulate residential and commercial site lighting, but it does not regulate lighting on streets, bikeways, or public walks. So this is a ordinance that is really meant to address private properties. It sets a general criteria for lighting standards to be met and then proceeds to outline site-specific standards for design purposes. It was also updated in 2007 to implement some dark sky lighting principles, which were discussed earlier this evening by a registered speaker. Next slide, please. Some of the proposed changes that are included in this ordinance here are relocating it from Chapter 10 into Chapter 29, specifically 29.36. This places the ordinance within building inspection, Chapter 29 being a building inspection section of the MGOs. And that is really done for clarity purposes. Building inspection is the agency that administers and enforces this. It makes sense because it is a private property ordinance as opposed to the streets, alleys, sidewalks. So this is really done to help create things from a user-friendly perspective. Next slide. In addition to simply taking the language over, there is one change within that language, and that is a reduction in the requirements for unshielded fixtures. And that reduction is from a 1,000 initial lumens to 500 initial lumens. For the purposes of understanding, what you see in the slide here are some standard light bulbs. And when you're talking about going from 1,000 initial lumens down to 500 initial lumens, what you're really talking about is a 70-watt bulb down to a 40-watt bulb. Those are going to be the types of bulbs that an individual would have within their home, lighting for indoor. They're typically going to be lights that are going to be screwed into sockets out in the front of residential properties. So that's the type of bulb and the light threshold that we are looking at. Next slide, please. Things that are not changing within this ordinance include the specific design lighting requirements for parking, commercial and industrial areas, the plan review for businesses and developments, limits for light trespass and glare, as well as maintaining the March 30th, 1993 effective date. So it is important to note that while it maintains this effective date, the change that I just talked about, the reduction in lighting, is effective retroactively. Anything that was installed prior to March 30th, 1993 remains grandfathered in. Anything that was installed or altered thereafter needs to be brought up to the code standards, as well as the proposed changes here. Next slide, please. So to help understand the applications of these changes, what I prepared are a couple of photos that help show and demonstrate what we're talking about when we're looking at reducing the light thresholds for shielded and unshielded fixtures. On the left-hand side, you see common applications that we see for unshielded fixtures. Primarily, we're talking about spotlights placed up at the peaks of residential garages or on properties. You also have an example of a light fixture that one might see along the side of a garage or at a doorway where the bulb is exposed. Because you can see the bulb directly, it can shine effectively in any direction. We consider it to be an unshielded fixture. On the right, you have shielded fixtures, which from an easily identifiable perspective, you are not able to see the bulb. The ordinance is intended to ensure that once you cross the lumen threshold, the light fixtures become shielded to help both reduce with glare, discomfort to the eye, as well as to help direct the light in the area that it's meant to be illuminating. Next slide, please. So what you see here is an example of spotlight fixtures that went from unshielded to shielded. Same lights, same intensity, but what you've effectively done now is put the light in the correct direction, illuminating the area around the property as opposed to vertically illuminating spaces above that aren't intended to be lit. Next slide, please. So one of the things we're looking at is who's going to be impacted by this. And this change will ultimately, in our opinion, largely impact those in residential neighborhoods or non-commercial areas where you are likely to see bulb fixtures on the sides of doors or garages or at the peaks of garages. Next slide, please. The entities that aren't going to be impacted, in our opinion, are things like parking lot illumination, illumination of commercial areas. Specifically, we're also not looking at things like holiday lights or other decorative type lights. So there should be no impacts that we're anticipating in those types of areas. Next slide. To help understand the context a little bit better, as well as our implementation strategy, our department will respond to citizen complaints and other agency referrals, such as the fire department or Madison Police Department. Our staff will go out to inspect generally 1 to 2 times per month. And as a point of reference, we average about 125 cases a year. That's looking back at the last 5 years. Not included in this slide, but in even more detail, about 3/4 of our cases are actually concerns for not enough illumination, coming from residential places where lights at front doors are not operable, or lights in parking lots are potentially too low to meet the threshold standards. The other 25% tend to be over illumination or concerns about bright lights shining into areas, which is really what these changes would address here. When we go out and we inspect, we always look to provide clear communication and education. We strive to educate rather than enforce, giving opportunities to correct, improve in the form of notices to property owners, opportunities to discuss concerns and find solutions with them. And then where necessary, we'll look to enforcement as the last resort. Next slide. So our expected outcomes here are that we're going to increase in our ability to respond to citizen concerns, particularly where we're talking about light shining from one property to another. But we're not going to be changing the light design process for businesses or commercial properties. We felt like this gives our department a better residential, the ability to better serve citizen concerns, creates a better residential night environment, and maintains safety within the public as well. So that is what I have for you here today. If there are any questions or you'd like to ask anything of me, please feel free to do so.
Thank you, Kyle. We have a number of alders in queue with what I assume are questions for staff, which is where we'll go next. So Alder Fair.
Thank you. Kyle, of that 25% that is light that's too bright, so to speak, I don't know if you know the exact number, but how many of those are residential, and how many of the complaints and how many of those maybe are from commercial properties?
The vast majority of that 25% are residential. And that's largely twofold. One, residential neighborhoods tend to be occupied in evenings, and so those are the people who are impacted by night lights. Individuals don't have a tendency to complain, even when they see a bright light, but they're driving down the street or they're moving past it and they're not seeing it on a constant basis. It's typically I try to go to sleep every night. My neighbor has a light on their garage. It's always turned on. It's shining into the bedroom. Is there anything we can do about it? That is what we see when we're getting complaints about lights being too bright in the majority of cases.
Okay, thank you. And the other question, when you say you go out and inspect once or twice a month, that's based on the complaints that you receive? Or can you explain that?
Yes, so that is based on the complaints that we receive or the referrals that we'll receive. The reason we will go out 1 or 2 times is typically because this is night lighting. We need to observe the conditions as they are at night. We will often take light readings to ensure that the standards are being met. We may do daytime reconnaissance to observe the site in a fully illuminated condition so we can understand what lights we're looking at. But because the inspectors need to oftentimes take nights readings, they have to go out at night with limited staff and availability, and the fact that it's occurring late into the night. We do this once to twice a month.
Right, and so you don't go out and just inspect randomly or as part of a process. This is all based on complaints, though. Referrals.
That is correct.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadze, questions? You have to let me turn it on, Alder, and then leave it alone.
Sorry about that. I guess my question is, when we talk about residents in our city of Madison, how many people do we actually engage to actually see if this is something they wanted as far as community engagement?
Alder, I'm not sure that's a question for staff. I think it would be a question for the sponsors of the ordinance. So we'll take that up later. Alder Figueroa Cole, questions for staff? Okay, one more time, folks. Once I turn your mic on, you have to leave it alone.
Yes, I don't know what I'm thinking. Okay, thank you for the answer regarding the enforcement, because I was curious about that too. We don't have enough staff to go around, and it is all based in complaints that you have, and you do it once or twice a month. I appreciate that. So the other question I have is, can you elaborate again on regards to the businesses side? Like there was a couple of slides in there. I couldn't figure out the number of the slide, but there was one right before the on-shield fixtures that you were talking about the businesses on the parking lot. Can you elaborate what does that actually means for businesses?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to do so. So one of the reasons we're not anticipating a large impact on the business community here is because the lights that you would tend to see in a parking lot, on a business, in that sort of setting is going to be well over the 1,000 initial lumen threshold. So the 1,000 lumen initial threshold is really the kind of bulb that one would find in a lamp in your living room or out in front of your front door. Those are not the types of bulbs that businesses use to illuminate their walkways, their parking lots, or their businesses. So they are already subject to the shielding and the illumination requirements. It's not to say that it's not possible that there isn't a business out there that has this, but I would believe it to be quite rare in my opinion.
And in regards to, I don't know like the cost on changing those shielded fixtures situation, but is there any initiatives to collaborate with MJ&E to see if they provide some of those packages that they usually offer homeowners? You get all these sets of light bulbs or fixtures at a reduced price?
Sure. So I don't believe that MG&E would have any sort of rebates or offsets here, as this is city specific. I know that they often will provide incentives for people to go to more energy efficient bulbs. What we would be looking at as far as impact or cost it would be effectively the cost of a light bulb. So it would be going from a 70 watt or a 70 watt equivalent bulb to something that is 40 watts. This is something you could go pick up at any local hardware store or department store. It's not to say that you have to change the fixture itself to shield it. You only would need to do so if you wanted to maintain that high level of intensity bulb. The easy and or cost-effective method would be to simply reduce the bulb by switching it with a different one.
Okay, so if I got that correctly, so the ordinance is reducing the luminance of the light bulb, but I can choose to keep it the higher one if I have it covered?
That's correct.
Okay, that wasn't clear, but thank you. Those are the questions I have.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Curry, questions for staff? Don't touch it, Alder.
And then you looked at me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Kyle, of the 125 cases, I'm assuming that these easily mitigate themselves with education and conversation. Are there any that move on to citations?
There are, but they are the overwhelming majority that are resolved through simple compliance and conversation and education. Where we find situations where we have to move to enforcement, it tends to be, I'm trying to think of the correct way to phrase this, but there may be an absentee landlord that is not taking the situation seriously, and it tends to not be that the lights are too bright. It tends to be that the illumination levels that need to be there, the lights at the doors are not working, the lights in the parking lot are not working. And we take that seriously because in those instances, we really are looking at a safety component. We have a parking lot that has no lighting. We have a front door that has no lighting. Now we're not getting a response from a property owner, and we have tenants in that building that are directly impacted from it. That's a situation where we would look to potentially move more aggressively towards an enforcement action because there's a quick, easy solution available for something that's not working. When we get into the situation where we're talking about light brightness, glare, spill onto properties, that's a situation where inspectors, if they need to, will go back 2, 3, 4 times and make sure that the lights are being adjusted and appropriately implemented before we would ever even consider moving to an enforcement.
Thank you. Add-on question from that. So with those residential properties, I know within my district, or I think it might be District 3, more residents have added floodlights for safety components. And there was a new development, I think it was the Ace Apartments, where there was an inflow of complaints because of floodlights affecting residences. And they indicated that they had put it in for safety reasons. Have there been, or is there a way to gauge like unintended consequences of, let's say we're dealing with a non-responsive or out-of-town property owner and or retaliation on tenants for making complaints regarding things that they are aware aren't in compliance?
Yeah, so we certainly have methods and practices in place to help protect tenants should they make a complaint to our department and feel like they would be retaliated upon. And that's simply for any complaint that our department would receive. As far as the unintended consequences, that's the tricky part. That's the unintended component of it. What we find from our perspective, sticking strictly to lighting here, is that it's not the existence of the floodlights that creates a problem. It's the existence of the floodlights allowed to shine in every direction, including areas that aren't intended to be illuminated. We find that when we're working with property owners, they'll go, well, I have safety concerns. I would like to illuminate my garage area, my door, but they don't consider that there's a neighbor that maybe is 2 houses down on a second story with a bedroom, and that floodlight is shining in that direction. And they're thinking, well, I'm just illuminating my property, when in fact they are illuminating major parts of the neighborhood. And that's where the shielding comes into play. It allows for them to still illuminate the area of their intent, but then prevents it from going every other way. And to be clear, shielding is not the same as focusing. Shielding does not necessarily prevent you from illuminating wide areas. It just prevents it from going to unintended areas.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Abbas, questions for staff?
Yeah, thank you. So Kyle, quick question about multifamily, small multifamily. So how those are impacted in this ordinance?
Small multifamily.
4-unit, 8-unit.
Yes, so a 4-unit or an 8-unit. If they have exterior parking with 3 or more stalls, they are already required to illuminate that parking lot. That has unchanged here. They're also required to illuminate the front entry door. That is potentially changed here should they choose to illuminate that door with a 70-watt bulb, which would be then at this point required to be reduced to a 40-watt bulb if they do not choose to shield that bulb. So as far as the impact that those areas could see, they would effectively have one of 2 options. If they have a 70-watt unshielded bulb, they could choose to shield that, or they could choose to reduce it down to a 40-watt. Those are the areas where we could see some level of impact.
And what about the parking lot? They can have as many, 2,000, 2,500 LED light focusing on the parking lot. There's no restriction there, correct?
So the parking lot lights are going to already exceed the lumen threshold, so they're going to be subject to all of these requirements. And there are specific design requirements that we look at as well, as far as light illumination at the ground level, as well as at the property lines. So those are areas where they will be lighting their parking lot, and we'll be making sure that that light is not spilling onto the adjacent properties, but they're already going to be subject to the shielding and cutoff requirements because of the intensity of the bulbs used.
And if it's shield, I think so you already answered that question, but just to double check, if the front door is shield, they can have more than 70 watt, correct? They can go above.
That is correct.
So they can have 100, 200 watts just for the safety reason and for people not, okay, that's good, thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Tischler, questions for staff?
Yes. My question, you mentioned holiday lighting, but what about residents who put up landscape lighting, mainly the lights that shine up on trees or accents on a patio that shine up?
Sure. So I'm going to break that into 2 categories. So accent lighting that we see that would be unimpacted because it's well below the threshold are going to be things like patio walkway lights, holiday lights, as we had mentioned, other landscape features. Maybe you have something in your backyard and there's some lights with that. What could be impacted, which would already be effectively subject to our ordinance in most cases, are going to be spotlight flooding. So if I have a spotlight on the ground, I'm shining it up onto my building, onto a tree, onto something else. There's a good chance that you're already subject to the shielding ordinance. This shouldn't necessarily impact you there. If you were to have a 70-watt floodlight on the ground, there's a chance, well, not a chance, that is a scenario where you would be then at this point required to shield that bulb to reduce the light.
And Mayor, if I could ask one follow-up question. Is there anything on the color temperature of a light, what Kelvin temperature we're
That was an area of discussion when we were talking about what we could bring forward and what we could potentially enforce. From a practical perspective, measuring the color temperature is difficult, which also then makes enforcement difficult. Now, I can certainly see the differences between a warm light or kind of that amber haze that people will often see and the very bright blue lights, but distinguishing between those two and setting a threshold can be quite difficult. And so there is nothing in this ordinance that addresses color temperature.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney, questions for staff?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kyle, I just want to summarize some of the things that you have already said. Of the 125 cases per year, how much staff time is allocated to that? Do you have a staff person that goes out and looks at these violations? So could you equate that in terms of staff time?
Sure. So in staff hours, typically a shift of lighting will comprise between 2 to 3 hours, and it will be 2 individuals. We send 2 individuals out for safety because it is nighttime hours, and if we're onto a property, we want to make sure that there's 2 individuals there. So we're talking between 4 to 6 hours times 2 times a month is 8 to 12 times 12 months is between 120 and 140 hours per year worth of staff time.
Okay, and how many people on your staff?
The staff that are equipped to do this, we have 7, and they work in rotating teams.
Okay, thank you. My next question is around fines and enforcement. So if there is a fine, is there an average that someone's in violation? Is there an average starting fine or a maximum fine? Could you say more about that?
Yeah, so the fines are codified in the ordinance. They are I believe a first level citation is $187 if I am correct. So that would be for a first offense. That's after a person has been given an opportunity to correct in the form of an official notice. Our department hasn't received a response and no attempts have been made, and we feel like there's a safety component involved. If we were to proceed towards a second level offense, issuing a second citation after that, it would be, I believe, $313, and then I believe $363. The numbers may not be exactly right, but that's the general area.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. Thank you very much. I just wanted to confirm that you said most of this was private property, private homeowners. Is that correct?
Private properties. So
private properties.
It could be many of the complaints that we receive for non-illumination are going to be rental properties in residential neighborhoods because the renters are calling and they're concerned for their safety because the lights aren't functioning. Where we get complaints for over-illumination is often in single family or adjacent to residential buildings where there are spotlights and floodlights used at nighttime and they're shining onto a homeowner property.
Okay, and I think you answered my final question, and I believe you did answer my final question. And my final question is, what solution is this ordinance solving? Could you summarize that, and then I'll be complete. Thank you.
Sure. So the intent was to, as I understand it, both provide building inspection more flexibility to address citizen complaints that are coming to our office where there are spotlights or lights in residential neighborhoods that are illuminating the neighborhood, disrupting the night sky, and give us the flexibility and the ability to address that while still balancing homeowner safety and homeowner concerns. It was also born out of concerns about dark sky initiatives and wanting to reduce the overall light illumination within the city of Madison. Our department felt like this was something that we could effectively enforce, and then that's what the alders who sponsored this resolution decided to move forward with.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter, questions for staff?
Thank you, Mayor. Kyle, you mentioned 125 cases, so I'm going to repeat that. Of the 125 cases, when you go out, and this is for the residents versus the small units or large unit multifamily, is your first contact education?
Yes.
Okay. And then how long do they have to rectify the situation?
Typically, we'll give a compliance date of about 30 days from notice. In practice, it may be more like 40 to 45 because we only go out once or twice a month. So at a minimum, it's 30 days.
So if they have the unshielded floodlights that you showed, and you can't buy shields for those, correct? You would have to get a new fixture.
There are opportunities, depending upon the light and the fixture, to add a shield. It could be as simple as sometimes replacing clear glass with frosted. But there are opportunities to retrofit in many instances, and we've seen that done.
And have you ever come across an individual who just can't afford to make any changes? Is there any funding available for anyone on a limited income or as you go out?
I am not aware of an individual who has claimed financial hardship relative to this ordinance. I am aware of individuals where they have needed to illuminate a parking lot. And at that point, we're talking about a much larger investment in the property, running wire, putting in new poles, brand new lights. We have had financial hardships discussed in that instance. I am not aware of any programs to help supplement or defray the costs for those. I am not aware of anything related to the light shielding or the trespasser glare, as we've discussed it this evening.
Okay. And my last question is, you mentioned the grandfather clause, which remains, and that's for what year is it? Did you say 73 back? I just can't remember.
March 30th of 1993.
And anything before March 30th, 1993 is grandfathered in. So those lights are still in violation, correct? If they remain today.
No, they're not in violation if they were installed prior to March 30th of 93.
Right.
But they may not meet the standards outlined in the code.
And that's okay, right? That's fine. They can continue going forth and be happy.
They may remain that way up until a point in time where the lights are redone or the site is renovated or redeveloped. Yes.
Okay. So my last question to you right now is, well, not right now. I might be calling you later this week, but my last question is, when you come across a situation where it's obviously, I don't want to say, well, for the lack of being politically correct, a high crime area, and they do have these floodlights, and they explain that to you. Have you ever come across that? Or is it just someone just saying that they need protection, or they're concerned about their safety?
Well, I would like to say that we always will take people at their best intentions. And so if an individual tells us that they have safety concerns, we're going to default to that. We wouldn't call an individual a liar. What we will do is...
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, good.
I'm not saying that you call them a liar. That's terrible.
No.
What I'm saying is, have you ever came across this situation because you know the area might have be high crime, or the person is saying that they're concerned for their safety?
Okay. Yes. So we have done inspections in areas as a result of referrals from the police department because of potentially a series of break-ins, or other instances. And so, yes, we have done inspections in areas specifically for that concern.
Okay. So let the record show that we believe the residents when they say whatever they say. And that's my last question. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadze, questions for staff?
Yeah, just a quick question. Out of those 125 complaints that you received, can you pinpoint most of the neighborhoods that, or where most of you've seen this, whether it's west side, south side? Can you pinpoint where most of them?
Yeah, so they're well distributed within the city. And I wouldn't pinpoint them to a specific neighborhood, but I would place the majority of complaints in areas that have high numbers of rental properties and high numbers of surface level parking lots.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue with questions for staff on items 71 and 72. We do have a motion to adopt both items on the floor. Is there discussion on items 71 and 72? Alder Benford.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to pause to thank my colleagues that sponsored this and all the people that work on dark sky issues. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter? Alder Carter, you're muted. Alder Carter, you're still muted.
Oh, well, I'm
There you
just
go.
talking away, Mayor, just talking away. I don't know what to say about this. I'm concerned that we're not going forward versus backward. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the impact it might have on our residents financially. We say it's no big deal. A lot of times things that we feel are no big deal end up being a big deal. So I am concerned about that. I think that the best way for this to go forward is to say from this point forward versus going back to 1993. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadze, discussion?
I think the question I raised before, as far as when we talk about our residents having community engagement, I guess you said to address the sponsors.
Well, you need to address me, Alder, but the sponsors can choose to answer if they would like.
Yes, Mayor.
So
my question is to you is, has there been community engagement in order to get some response from the public about this?
thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. The motion is to adopt items 71 and 72. Alder Evers.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just speak to my colleague's question. There has been community engagement and concerns responded to complaints that have come to me as an alder and to Alder Foster. And actually, there's a resident in Bay Creek in my district who's looked into this quite, particularly on the issue of safety. And there is research that's been done that addresses the researched and studied fact that glare from bright, unshielded lights actually decreases safety because it shines into our eyes, it constricts our pupils, and that blinding light means that someone who's seen by a passerby. It makes it more difficult for our eyes to adjust to low light, in other words. So the purpose of this is not to prevent public safety. Is to have the reasonable amount of light shining where it needs to shine on the property that needs to be illuminated, but not spilling over in such a way that we get residents' complaints from children who can't sleep because there's light shining into their bedrooms at night from a neighbor next door or 2 doors down. It's a rather simple adjustment, in my mind, a first step towards addressing light pollution, which is a real thing. If this was about chemical pollution or smoke coming into our neighbors' yards, we would understand that more because we think of pollution in those ways. We don't always think about the epidemiological effects of glare and light and how it impacts sleep and how important it is to get a good night's sleep. Nor do we think about it in terms of how excessive lighting impacts the natural world. And animals and birds and things like that. So we're talking about a form of pollution and a way of trying to make sure that our residents are clear about lighting their own properties, not property outside of their property lines. So I encourage you to vote for this. This is common sense. Makes a lot of sense. It's a way of moving forward we would not allow ordinances that had standards for other types of pollution to go unabated, simply grandfathered it in forever. At a certain point, when the technology and the understanding of human health is clear with unequivocation that we know this is good for human beings, good for us, good for our residents, it's time to move forward collectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Okay, Madam Mayor, are we in discussion? I just want to make sure that I'm in order.
Yes, Alder, we are.
Thank you. I will not be supporting this for these reasons. 125 cases is what's been reported. The enforcement or lack of enforcement and the fines, that's problematic for me. And the other thing is that this is an excellent example of a solution looking for a problem. And so I will not be supporting this. And when the vote is taken, I'll ask for a roll call, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Abbas.
Yeah, thank you. Just for the staff, I think so when we go in education and outreach process, probably really good to add information on Focus on Energy Saving Kit. Homeowners can apply for that. It's free. It's state program, and after 3 years, you can apply again for another kit. So you can get those LEDs and other equipment. That's just one addition for the education part. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. The motion is to adopt items 71 and 72. A roll call has been requested. All those in favor of adoption, aye. Those opposed to adoption, no. As your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Thank you. Alder Carter.
No.
Alder Carter, no. Alder Conklin.
Aye.
Alder Conklin, aye. Alder Curry. Aye. Alder Curry, aye. Alder Evers.
Aye.
Alder Evers, aye. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Aye.
Alder Figueroa Cole, aye. Alder Foster. Aye. Alder Foster, aye. Alder Furman.
Aye.
Alder Furman, aye. Alder Hellerson is excused. Alder Harrington McKinney.
No.
Alder Harrington McKinney, no. Alder Heck. Aye. Alder Heck, aye. Alder Miadze. Alder Miadze, aye. Alder Paulson. Aye. Alder Paulson, aye. Alder Fair. Aye. Alder Fair, aye. Alder Tischler. Aye. Alder Tischler, aye. Alder Verveer. Aye. Alder Verveer, aye. Alder Vitiver is excused. Alder Hellier. Alder Hellier, aye. Alder Abbas. Alder Abbas, aye. Alder Benford.
Aye.
Alder Benford, aye. Alder Bennett. Aye. Alder Bennett, aye. That's 16 ayes and 2 noes.
With 16 ayes, items 71 and 72 will pass. Alder Evers, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Mayor. I, for some reason or another, cannot turn my video back on. It says I've been stopped from doing so.
Alder, we were having a little bit of a connection issue, so I think the tech facilitators can turn you back on.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. All right, just in time for us to have finished our agenda. So just, we're not quite there yet, Alder, but we're almost there. Now is time for any introductions of items from the floor that were not previously introduced. Seeing none, it's then time for announcements. We would like to wish a happy birthday to Alder Paulson on the 16th and Alder Benford on the 18th.
Happy birthday to you.
Alder Bennett, did you have an announcement?
I have a question. Can we all take a picture when we're done?
I think we'll leave that to you and council leadership's discretion.
Let's take a picture.
I will say that in the past, there were recreational activities after council meetings. That used to happen once upon a time. Are there other announcements? Alder Conklin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have an announcement for my colleagues. On July 27th, I'm going to send this in your email, but on July 27th at the Lucier Center, they have Yazzie interns, which I can't really tell you what it all stands for, but they're high school seniors and juniors that they asked me to come and speak to them and stuff, so they're wondering if anyone else would be interested in that, so please just look for that in your emails and let me know if you guys would like to come to the Lucier Center. And when? July 27th at 3 p.m. Like I said, I'm going to forward you guys the information, but I just want you guys to be on the lookout for that. And let me know if you would like to come and speak to the seniors and juniors over at the Lucier Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Paulson.
I just wanted to reiterate to the tech folks if they could leave the Zoom open for just a couple of minutes so we can, if our colleagues in Zoom will stay on for a minute as well after adjournment.
Thank you, Alder. So we'll ask our colleagues on Zoom to stick with us for a minute, and perhaps we'll bring everybody up here on the dais to take a picture so that we can get the Zooms in as well. I see nobody else with an... So we have a found pair of glasses. Alder Carter, if you would unmute yourself, please, and do the honors.
I move adjournment.
It's moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned.
Who's the second on the adjournment?
Furman.